In this tutorial, we are going to take this photo and we're going to do a very, very simple technique, which I call flipping the scene to turn it into this photo, where we make the wildlife in the photo brighter and we make the background darker. Folks, my name is Matt Kloskowski. Welcome to the latest video. And I hesitate to say, I don't want to get all, of a salacious headline like I do this on every wildlife photo, but I will say pretty darn much, it's 80 to 90% of my wildlife photography that I do something like you're about to see on, because I think it's that necessary to make the wildlife pop out. We, portrait photographers, event photographers, they get to use lights and they get to shine lights on their subject and separate them from their background. We don't always get that opportunity with wildlife photography. So in the editing part of this, I think it's our job to do it. Let's go ahead and dive in. I will share my screen with you here. So this is a shot I took of an eagle on a lake here one morning, and this is straight out of the camera. Okay, so I'm doing straight out of the camera here. You can see, obviously we need some cropping, and that's the case with almost all of my wildlife photos, especially bird photography, because you can generally never get close enough. So, but I'll go in here and crop it. I don't really have a specific output size in mind here, so I can crop it to whatever I wanted. Creatively, if you have a specific print size, then you should crop it to that. But I'll go ahead, I'll crop it in here. I'll give the eagle a little bit of room to fly into. So here's my problem with this and a lot of my wildlife photography, and that is the background draws more attention than the subject. Okay, the subject is darker, especially, the dark wings on the eagle here. The background and some of the foreground here is actually brighter than the subject. So what could I do? I could go in here, I could grab my exposure slider and I could pull that up, and that in turn globally brightens the photo. To me, it takes away a lot of depth, right? And something I'm always trying to add into my photos is depth. And I get a little bit of that depth with depth of field, it's separation. So I do want separation, but I don't necessarily want to just brighten the photo the way that I have here. So the quick, easy way to do it, and then I'll show you the way that I really recommend. The quick, easy way to do it would be go to your adjustment brush, and this will work in Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw. And you can increase the exposure, and then you can use your adjustment brush to go in here and paint along the eagle. I did a previous video, which it got so much great feedback. Probably one of my most popular videos ever, which is 5 little known Lightroom classic tips. One of those tips was to hold down the command key, and I'll make sure that that video shows up over here as well if you want to go watch it. But hold down the command key, and that'll enable, it's a command key on Mac, it's a control key on PC. That'll enable auto mask mode, which would let you paint around the edges here and go through and try to, just brighten. So you're not brightening the whole photo and you don't have to get painstakingly zoomed into this. So you could do that. You could do that, and you could go in here and you could make that eagle brighter that way. Okay. So I'm going to delete that adjustment, and let's talk for a very, very quick moment about why I don't like that technique for this. And that is, if I were just sharing it on Instagram, social media, small, most people are just looking at it on their phone. If I were just sharing it on Instagram, you wouldn't be able to see those edges that well. All right. On the web, wherever, you wouldn't be able to see it that well. If I'm doing a bigger print, technically somebody can pixel peep and get up closer to it. Okay. And now I don't think those edges would hold up to a bigger print. Again, Instagram, I don't care if you pinch zoom in, you're not part of my audience. Like, that's not who photography is meant to be shared for. So if you just look at the photo, you wouldn't see the edges. So that's why I want to go the step further in this and take it into Photoshop. And it's actually very simple to do. Speaking of time to pay the bills, if you're interested in Photoshop, I got 2 things for you. Number one, if you like what you see in this tutorial and you need help with Photoshop, my Photoshop system is a great place to start. It takes you through layers and selections and the basics and image sizing, resolution, retouching, masking, all those other things. And it just covers photography. Photoshop is this big. We take it down to this big. Makes it so much easier. If you're a little bit past that, that's a beginner, late beginner phase. If you're a little bit past that and you like adding depth and light, what I'm doing here, check out my No Light, No Problem courses. Again, I'll make sure I put links to those in the description here. Okay. All right. So let's get back to our story here. So we're going to take this photo over into Photoshop. So I go photo, edit in Photoshop. As we get over into Photoshop, what we're going to do is head up here to the select menu. We're going to go down to select subject. Okay. And that will generally do a pretty good job of selecting your subject. Again, wildlife photography, you know, there could be more distractions, there could be less distractions. It depends on your photo, but it hasn't done a perfect job here, but it's done good enough. So what we'll do now is head over to the adjustments panel, right? And then I like curves for this. You could use brightness and contrast. You could use levels. It doesn't really matter. Don't think it matters which one. All we need is a brightening adjustment. I tend to use curves for it. So I add an adjustment. You can see the curve adjustment layer settings that we have right over here. And I would just pull that up. And you can see it allows me to control the brightness on the eagle. Now we don't want to go crazy and do that. So you've got to really pull it, you know, pull it back. I always go too bright and then I start pulling it back until I think it looks better. So maybe somewhere right around there. Okay. Now we do have some weird selection edges that happen here, and the select subject did a good job. Didn't do a perfect job. I don't want to make this a selections tutorial because there are ways that we could refine it, but I'm going to do it really quickly. I'll Command or Control plus to zoom in on the shot here. And then I'm going to click on that layer mask. I'm going to press B for my brush tool. I'm going to use a very small brush, 100% opacity, and I got about 50 to 60% flow. And what I'm going to do here is start painting. All right. And if you look at my foreground color, I'm painting with black, which is going to hide the bright part of that layer, and it's going to show me the original background. Okay. So I'm just going to paint there, and then there's a little bit that needs over here. And you know, the beauty of this, by using a soft edge brush with flow where we can control, the more we scribble over an area, the more it'll build up the effect. By doing this, you're not even seeing the edges here, right? You're not even seeing the fact that I'm not being perfect about painting along these edges. Okay, so just something like that, a couple little spots here and there. All right, that's looking pretty darn good. So now what we have is what I had mentioned before, which is, in a way, it's flipping the scene, right? We took the eagle, which was dark, and we made it brighter. Now what we have to do is to complete the flip, we've got to make the background a little bit darker. And you might not always need to do this. What we just did here actually might work fine. But if you want to take it that next step, if you need to take it that next step, we can flip it. So what we're going to do here, remember, I've got this adjustment layer. Now it's controlling the eagle, and now I can control how bright or dark that eagle gets just by moving that curve. All right. What I'm going to do is press Command or Control J. That's going to duplicate the layer. All right. Then I'm going to click on that layer mask, and I could do this one of two ways. I can use the keyboard shortcut, or if you click on the layer mask and you see your properties panel, there's the word invert. The keyboard shortcut for it is Command or Control I. All right. So now what I did is I inverted it. So what it just did is it made black white and it made white black, which means that my layer mask just flips. So now this adjustment layer, and if we want to name them, we can always double click and call this one background. This adjustment layer controls the background. Double click and rename this one, and that one controls the eagle. So now we can go to the background adjustment layer, and instead of making it brighter, which we did because we just copied it, now we can make it a little bit darker. I actually don't think we need to do that too much in this scene here, but there are a lot of things you can use this for. For example, I've got this adjustment layer. I could always go in here and hop up here to the layer menu. I could go down to my adjustment layers here. So I could do things like hue and saturation. Okay. And then all I would have to do is drag this mask over to that hue saturation adjustment layer. I can delete the original curves layer. And now if maybe I wanted to boost the saturation of the background, I could do that. So it doesn't have to just be brightening and darkening. You can do other things with it as well, because you already have the mask. You already made the mask and did all these things with it. Now it's very, very quick to make adjustments. So now if you look here, we can go back to our foreground. I can make that a little bit brighter if I wanted to. And now if you want to see the before and after, here's a little trick. If you hold down your Option key on Mac or your Alt key on the PC, so Option Alt, and you click on the eyeball icon on the background layer, it will hide all other layers, and then it will reveal them. In fact, I'm going to undo a couple of times. Let's get back to my curves. There we go. Let's get back to where I did darken it just a hair. Okay. So again, Option or Alt click, that's before, that's after. Again, before and then after. So you can adjust those however you need to your photo. I would always say, take a step back from this. So many times I see people do something like this and it just looks weird. All right. It might look good at first. Take a step back for an hour or two, come back to your computer, look at it again. And I'm guaranteeing if you did go really crazy with it, you're probably going to come and you're going to pull it back a little bit. But again, Option or Alt click on that eyeball. You can see the before and the after. If you want to get back over to Lightroom from Photoshop, then all you got to do is in Photoshop, just go to the File menu and hit Save. And then give it a couple seconds, you'll see your photo appear back inside of your Lightroom folder. And also don't forget, I had mentioned earlier, if you want to take your learning to another level, if you're more interested in starting out in Photoshop, I've got my Photoshop system. If you're a little bit past the beginner level and you're more interested in adding light and depth and dimensions to things, make sure you check out my No Light, No Problem courses. And also, if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. What are you waiting for? I got lots of good tutorials and you won't miss them. I do live sessions here and there as well. So that'll make sure you don't miss out on any of those as well.